Okay. Hey, we're about to get started here. If you guys all want to come back in, somebody out there want to gather up the people in the hallway, the foyer, all that stuff, just come on in, have a seat. I am not Catie Nickell. I think you can tell that. But he's going to be up here in just a minute, and we have an announcement to make before that. So if you're out in the foyer, if you want to come in, if you're in here, if you want to sit down. So, good morning, Westside family, those who remain as adults in the adult Bible class. Good to worship with you this morning. And let's see here. Next week is our annual fall festival, and we could really use your help. There's a few open spots on some sign-up sheets, and so if you could possibly sign up to help with that. Remember, this is a free event to reach out to our community. And there's going to be lots of families who come in their costumes to play games, get free candy and prizes, and have a ton of fun. And in addition to that, this is our chance to share the love of Christ with them and invite them into a deeper relationship with God. But in order for this event to work, we need our Westside family to sign up to run all of the various booths and activities. Right now we're about 33%. We might be a little higher. I think we're a little higher. So we've got some work to do. Maybe we're at 50% right now of sign up, but we need some more people. Many of the booths are actually inside the gym or inside classrooms, and the booths come with everything you need to run them. If you'd like to sign up, there will be a sign up sheet right now being passed around. All of them will come at the same time. I'm going to make sure that they get to you and you have a chance to sign up. And remember that there's also out in the lobby, if somehow you get skipped accidentally, it's not on purpose, you can go out to the lobby and ask how you can help there. So if you have any questions, remember to contact Joel, or sometimes he goes by Joey, and Tara Reese. So thank you, everyone. Thanks again, and we're going to pass it off to Ian.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thank you for staying for the adult Bible class. Sorry to see some people didn't stick around, but for those of you, I hope this is a lesson that blesses you and that encourages all of you guys for the work that we've done so far in Ethiopia and the work that we will continue to do. My name is Catie Nickell. Probably most of you guys already knew that. So this last week, actually the 6th of October to the 15th of October, my wife Catie Nickell, who's sitting over there, my wife and I traveled to Ethiopia, made a trip there to kind of check up on the missionary work that we do there. I'll talk about that missionary work, and I'll tell you guys all about our travels, all about our trips. And then afterwards, I do want to open it up for a Q&A. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to ask me, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. So, this is the 2017 update of the Church of Christ missionary efforts in Ethiopia. Hopefully I'll be doing one of these every year, and I'll be letting you guys know all the great work that God's doing in the kingdom there in Ethiopia. So here's an overview, just a quick overview of the missionary efforts that we do in Ethiopia. So there's actually, we call it Change for Children here at Westside. But when I got to Ethiopia, obviously we're not only just touching children's lives in Ethiopia. We do a lot more work than just the kindergarten. And so I asked John Ed, who I'll talk about John Ed a little bit, but John Ed is the guy that's been, making this happen since the early 60s when the Church of Christ missionary efforts in Ethiopia began. And so I talked to John Ed and I said, what do I actually call this when I go back home? He said, just call it the Church of Christ missionary efforts in Ethiopia. So that's what I'm going to refer to it as. But we call it Change for Children here, and that's because the efforts that we fund go directly to a kindergarten. But in Ethiopia, the missionary efforts from the Church of Christ, there's Church of Christ all over the United States that help fund this. And so there's kindergarten, like the one that we support in Jima. And the kindergartens are awesome because it gives children that don't have education there free education. It gives them hope to continue on in school. So in Ethiopia that it's all a government school that they go there. And so in order to get to government school, you have to be, pretty advanced. They only let about half of the children in to school because that's all their tax money can afford. They spend a lot of their tax money elsewhere, like on their military. So they're not able to provide every child like we have here in the United States. They aren't able to provide every child with an education. And so what this does is it allows children to get a head start so that when they're trying to kind of apply for this education, they're able to do it. And so what we have is a 2-year model. There's a kindergarten, there's a first year and a second year kindergarten. And then hopefully after that they're able to get into the government school because of their head start. And one of the main things that we do is teach them English, and that really helps them out in getting into that government school. So, but the kindergartens don't just do that, but it blesses these families. And not all the families know about God, and not all the families are Christian. In fact, many of them are Muslim, or maybe some other faith. So it gives those families an opportunity to hear about God from their children. And it teaches these children values and Christian values, and teaches them about the Bible. So this isn't just your typical public school. It's every morning they have a chapel, and they learn about God and they worship God. So it's just amazing what one little kindergarten, the effects it can have. And I'll talk about that more. But that's just one of the many things that the Church of Christ missionary efforts do. The other one is there's a school for deaf children. You guys probably do that as well. But the deaf in Ethiopia, they actually didn't have the language. And so you just had all these, deaf people that couldn't communicate with anyone. And so actually, years ago, we turned their native tongue Amharic into a sort of American Sign Language. They did some translations, created a sign language for these people. And so it gives these children that don't have any way of communicating with anyone a means of communication with their families. And they do training for their parents, so they train them on how to deal with their deaf children. So it's pretty amazing what that School for Deaf Children comes in. Something that's interesting about that is the School for Deaf Children is like almost a dormitory situation where parents, they can't commute 200 kilometers a day, so they actually drop their children off for the entire school year. And one of the days we were in camp, actually, a little child, I saw him walking up, and he just had like a plastic bag with him, and there's a few things in a plastic bag, and he was talking to one of the administrators there. And I asked, I said, what's that little boy doing? Why isn't he in class? Well, he's enrolling for the deaf school, and that's, that was his luggage. He just had a little plastic bag. And he was going to come learn how to speak. He wasn't able to speak to his parents, and his parents didn't live in the camp. They didn't even live very close, but they wanted to try to give their child a better life, and we're gonna do that. So he was able to enroll in the school, and now he's learning how to communicate. So I think that's a great thing. And just like the kindergarten, those kids learn about Jesus. They worship, and there's tons of cool stories about those children, and I'll talk about them later. The other missionary effort that we have going on is a preacher training school, and that was something that was probably my favorite thing going to Ethiopia. I mean, I like it all. I mean, God is working in amazing ways in Ethiopia, but the preacher training school had a special place in my heart. It just has a really cool model where you have all these preachers or all these young men coming, learning about God, learning how to preach, and then they're being sent out, and they're starting churches, and they're telling people about God, and then they're sending more people back to that preacher training school. So it just has this kind of multiplying effect. And I'll tell you some amazing stories I heard about preachers in Ethiopia, but that's just another one that's going on there. And then obviously water wells. We've talked about water wells a lot, but they drill water wells for people that don't have fresh water. And actually those preachers from the preacher training school will a lot of times do what Jesus did. He'll go to the water well and he'll tell people about the living water, the bread of life. So we give them eternal quenching of their thirsting, as well as just some fresh water. So these are just 4 major ones, but there's actually more. There's a computer school. There's welding. So there's a lot of facets in this missionary efforts and the evangelism of the people of Ethiopia. But it's just amazing work. And I wanted to kind of share all of those things with you guys, because this is something that I didn't quite understand before I actually went and saw all these efforts going on. So we have all sorts of stuff going on. And Westside, in a roundabout way, supports all of these things. But Westside's main primary support is a kindergarten in Jima, Ethiopia. And, occasionally we will send money to the preacher training school or to drill water wells. But our main focus is this kindergarten in Jima, Ethiopia. So that's kind of the overview of the missionary efforts. There's a lot of really cool things going on, really amazing things going on. And I'll talk about all of these a lot more as we go on. So I'll talk about kind of the model that John Ed set up. Now, John Ed didn't start this, but in the early 1960s, they had missionaries over in Ethiopia at the church that he was going to. And the elders asked him if he would go kind of check on what's going on in Ethiopia, how are things going, and report back to us. And that ended up being a 4-year stay for John Ed in Ethiopia. And a life-changing thing for him now because he's been 80 times since then. So that's John Ed to my left there. He's pointing out where we're going. So I think his right hand's on Addis and his left hand's on Nickell. So Nickell's just west of Addis there on the map. So he's telling me about everything that's going on. It was really neat getting to talk to him, get to hear some wisdom from him and just his travels. So when he went in the early 1960s, he really had two main goals. His first goal was to evangelize the whole country of Ethiopia. It wasn't to drill 100 water wells. It wasn't to start 50 kindergartens. It was to evangelize the whole country of Ethiopia, the entire country, all the people there. So that's like a pretty lofty goal. It's pretty amazing. It's not anything that will ever be done. It will never be stopped. It will never, be continuing until Christ comes again. So, a pretty intense goal to set, but pretty amazing. So, one of the ways he wanted to do that was to ensure the success and the longevity of the missionary work by training the locals to take it over, so that we didn't need to have Americans run it. And to this day, Americans do not run this. It's all run by native Ethiopians. John Ed or his son will go twice a year for about a month, and they'll check and see, what's going on, what needs need to be met, and now I will go check, probably once a year for a couple of weeks, and see what's going on, see what Jima needs, how we can help bless those people and further God's work there in Ethiopia. So after about 50 years of this, so this is early 60s when this started happening, and a lot's happened since then. So they started with one church in Addis, Ethiopia, which is the capital of Ethiopia. Then they started a training school, and they started kindergartens and a school for deaf children. And now there's over 800 congregations in the country of Ethiopia. So praise God, that's pretty amazing. 800 congregations coming from some efforts from Church of Christ here. I'm sure 800 congregations didn't support that. So pretty amazing what's going on in 50 years. And actually, Bahailu might tell you it's closer to 1,200 congregations. It's really hard to count when you have that many congregations, right? So there's many congregations, I would say at least 800 in Ethiopia, where people are being taught the Word of God. They're being taught the gospel. And so some awesome work that's going on there. So that's kind of just the model that has been adopted. It's all run by Ethiopians, and some funding comes from them, obviously, in their contribution, but a lot of the funding comes from us because it's difficult to fund kindergartens and to fund schools for deaf children and the preacher training school, and so they require some help from us, and that's where we come in and fill the gaps. So on our trip, we visited 3 cities. The first city we visited was called Addis Ababa. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Addis Ababa. But it's the capital of Ethiopia, and it's in a volcano, and it's a really developed city. It's it's a huge city. People drive around in cars. There's really good roads, a lot of skyscrapers, and so Addis Ababa was our first stop in Ethiopia. When we first got there, we stayed there for a night, and then from there we went on to Nickell, and Nickell's a college town. It's much smaller than Addis, and it's only about 250 kilometers away from Addis, but it's about 7.5 hours, 8 hours in a car on some bumpy roads and through towns that you just have cows walking across the road, so you got to let the cows go, you got to let the people go. So it's a long trip to not go very far, but so we went to the camp. We were there for 2 days, and in the camp, that's where the preacher training school, the school for deaf children, and the kindergarten are. So in Addis, I'm sorry, I need to go back. So in Addis, there's a school for deaf children on the compound there in Addis, and there's obviously a church. Besides that, there's a lot of the clerical work that goes on. A lot of the administrative work is hosted in Addis. But that's all there is in Addis, just the school for deaf children, and then obviously the church and all that clerical stuff. And so then in the camp has another compound. In all these cities, there's like a little compound with our missionary work going on in there. And in the camp, there's a school for deaf children. There is a preacher training school, and then there's a kindergarten, and there's also a church there. There's a little building where people meet and worship God. And so that's what, in the camp, we visited all 3 of those missionary efforts, and got to see how God was blessing each and every one of those. And then the last stop we made was in Jima, and Jima is where that kindergarten is that we support. It's in southern Ethiopia. It's another 9-hour car ride or so from the camp. And probably that was the most treacherous drive from the camp to Jima, because from Addis to cities, the roads are pretty good, but if you want to go in between cities, it's a little rough. But it's really cool getting to see the African countryside, and it was nothing like what I expected, but it was awesome. And so we stayed in Jima for 2 nights, kind of 2 days and 2 nights, left early that 3rd day, and got to kind of visit. We visited with the parents of the children that go to that school. We visited with the children, the teachers, the staff, and then the preacher that's there. And I'll talk about all of that later. So that was our trip. That's kind of the overview of our trip. So we were there for 9 days. First day in Addis. Then we went to the camp for 2 nights, 3 days. Then we went to Jima for 2 nights, 3 days. And then we went actually back to Addis for the remainder of our trip. And we stayed there and got to kind of visit with the locals there. Had some coffee with them, and just kind of lived an Ethiopian life for a couple days before we came back home. So here's our day 1 on arrival. So we have my wife obviously to the left, and then right next to her is Brother Alamehu. He's one of the main he is the hands and feet of us in Ethiopia. So he is the I'm blanking on his title, but he essentially runs everything that goes on there. He is the assistant of Bahailu. He is second only to Bahailu, and really with Bahailu's conditions kind of worsening, Alamehu does essentially all of the overseeing of all the work in Ethiopia. So he's a very, very busy guy, kind of always taking phone calls and talking to this brother that has this congregation over here, helping with these people, or actually while we were there, one of the sisters died, and so he was handling that and taking care of her funeral and arranging things for her. So that's Alamehu, and he's an awesome guy. He actually went with us on our entire trip. He was our driver and translator the entire trip. So it was awesome getting to know him, and just his kind of attitude towards the work that's being done there was pretty amazing. And one thing that I really liked about Alamehu is he always called me brother, so I would say, hey, Alamehu, yes, brother, It's just really amazing kind of the way he welcomed me immediately and welcomed Catie, and he already knew Dean, but he just welcomed us immediately and was just the kindest guy. And then obviously you know me, I'm back there in the back, and you guys know Dean Harthorne. And then behind Dean is this guy named Bekele. And Bekele has actually a really awesome story as well. Bekele was an orphan in Addis, many years ago. And he came and he lived on the compound in Addis, and now he's a clerk and one of the drivers. Just this one orphan turned into a servant of God, and someone who's making sure that work is continuing. So that's another fruit that we can see immediately from the work in Ethiopia. So his name is Bekele. And then to, I guess it'd be to his left, our right, is John Ed Clark. And John Ed Clark is the man He didn't start it again, but he's just been kind of the backbone of the American side of the efforts in Ethiopia. So this was his 80th trip. He has a couple more planned, and he is just on fire for God. At his age, he's riding in those 8-hour car rides with us, and he's getting out and he's preaching, teaching the gospel, and loving these people in Ethiopia. So it was awesome getting to spend time with him on that trip. So our first day, we get into Addis at 5 a.m. And actually, I'll go back. Actually, Bekla was the one that picked us up from the airport. So we get into the airport, and things aren't really going as planned. The place where we were going to get picked up ended up no outside visitors could come in, so we had to leave the airport. We're just kind of standing outside the airport. No one speaks English there, so we're just standing there and waiting for. We thought Al Mayhew was coming to get us, so we're just standing there, have no way of calling anyone. So just kind of hoping that someone eventually drives by and says, "Hey, I'm supposed to get you." And so Dean walks off. Dean says, I'm going to walk around the parking lot, see if I can find him anywhere. So Catie and I are just standing there, and there's people coming and going and cars driving up, and I'm looking at people, and they look at me, and I'm like, maybe nope, okay, they keep driving. And so eventually I actually stood up. There's like some railing like this, and so I stood up on the railing, and I was like, I'm white, I'm in Ethiopia, like if they'll notice me, if they're supposed to get an American, then they'll see, okay, there's a guy standing up on a rail. And so I'm standing up there, and I'm not standing up for more than 30 seconds, and a guy walks up to us, and he says, "Hey, are you guys from the United States?" And, "Oh, yeah, we're from Church of Christ?" "Oh, yeah, this is going to be the guy." He's like, "Okay, where's Dean?" And we're like, "Oh, okay, thank you. This guy is the guy that's supposed to get us." So that was Bekla. And we got to hear Bekla's story afterwards, how he's come to Christ through the orphanage there, and through John Ed, and through the teachings in Addis. We got to figure out, and Bekla is another guy that just has an infectious attitude, really positive. He's like a joker. I kind of feel like he and I are kindred spirits. We like to joke around, and he's really funny. So I really enjoyed meeting both Al Mayhew and Bekla. They're just amazing guys. So afterwards, obviously the airport shenanigans, we eventually get to the compound in Addis, which is about a 20-minute drive from the airport. And the compound's really cool, just like, some houses. There's a guest house there for us to stay in. There's, this congregation is there in this kind of building with this corrugated sheet roofing. There was the school for deaf children, and then a lot of the administration buildings. So we got in there, we had breakfast. John had cooked us some breakfast, and then we went to church at 9 o'clock. And that morning, John had preached, and he just gave a really cool lesson about how Ethiopia is home for him. And, he talked about some historical things about the Church of Christ and about Ethiopia. And after the service, we were able to kind of meet some of the other brothers there. So that was the first time we met Al Mayhew. We met a man named Mogus, who also is very busy. He's does similar things as Al Mayhew there. He wasn't with us much on the trip, but he is a very active member in the work there in Ethiopia. So we met Mogus, and we met all sorts of brothers and sisters in Addis, and just had a wonderful time. Now, my dad just put I think it says 15 minutes up there, so apparently I only have 15 minutes left. Look, I'm not going to be done in 15 minutes. I'll tell you, I have way too much to talk about. Too much has happened to me to wrap it up in 15 minutes. So if you guys need to go, you're welcome to go. I'm not going to talk for another 15 minutes. It's going to be much longer than that. So, sorry. We met Mogus and other brothers and sisters in Addis, and we're just really blessed getting to worship with people in Ethiopia and in Addis. Hearing them sing, they sing, it's so loud, it's like yelling almost. And they have these, it's part of their culture where they just sing extremely loud, and they lift up their voices to God. So that was awesome. Catie actually took some film of it at one point. It was just really fun. After that service, I had the songs. I didn't know what they were saying, but I had them stuck in my head. I was singing them almost the rest of the trip. So after that, we got to kind of explore the compound there, and we got to see the School for Deaf Children, so I included some pictures in our slides. So behind Catie, right there is the School for Deaf Children. And then those are the guest house on the compound on the top left, and then that's inside one of the classrooms. You can kind of see the desks and stuff. So we got to kind of look around the compound and see some of the facilities that they have there. And they're not really nice by any stretch of the imagination, but they still bless these people so much, and they're so happy to have what they have. So it's really cool. It's really neat getting to see all those buildings. So after church, we were pretty tired, so we went back to the guest house and relaxed there for a little bit. And then Al Mayhew came and said, "Hey, we're gonna actually go to the Sudanese congregation here tonight, because there's a Sudanese refugee, a building where Sudanese refugees live, and they meet and worship God in that building, and that's where we're gonna go." And he said, "Hey, can you preach a lesson?" Okay, yeah, sure. So I spent that afternoon preparing a lesson, and Dean already had a couple lessons prepared. And so we went to this Sudanese refugee. It's not a camp; it's a building, and it was really eye-opening, because the compound that is in Addis, the Church of Christ compound there, is like on the very opposite side as Addis as this building that they met in. And so we traveled by car, and it took about 40 minutes to get there through the streets of Addis. And we get to this part of town that Al Mayhew said this is a new part of the town. It's been built in the last 5 years or so. But it did not look new. It was really run down. The roads weren't paved. There's just kind of trash everywhere, and the buildings were dilapidated. They didn't have running water. And so we stop on the street, and I'm like kind of amazed. I've never been somewhere quite like this before. And we go to this building, and we walk up probably four flights of stairs, and it's a much different place than I've ever been. The buildings run down. There's people cooking in the hallways with little fires, and we get up to this door, and Al Mayhew knocks a couple times and says something, and no one comes to the door. He just walks in, and there's no one to be seen right there, except a little kid just kind of standing looking at us. Who are these people? And he opens like kind of a curtain, like a shower curtain almost, just pulls it back, and there's like 15 guys there standing. Well, you can see the Sudanese brothers there, just sitting there with big old smiles on in their suits, ready to hear the gospel, ready to hear some preaching from some folks in America. So Dean and I preached, and Dean gave a lesson, and then I gave a lesson. And when you're speaking through a translator, 2 lessons, we were running at around 120, 130 minutes. Hour 20, hour 30 at the end of those lessons. And so we sit down, and I'm thinking, that was a lot of teaching. That's a good amount. And no one really says anything. It's just kind of quiet for a while. And then Dean says, I have another lesson. I'm like, yeah, let's hear it. And so Dean went and taught another lesson. So So Dean taught another lesson, and we just got to hear the willingness and how on fire these people were. There's nothing that could keep them from hearing the Word of God. They didn't want to come hear a lesson so they could feel good about themselves and lead. They wanted to hear the gospel, and they wanted to hear ways that they could apply it to their lives, and they wanted to go out and serve God with the news and the message that they've been told. So it's just really cool getting to hear those guys and getting to worship with them and hearing them worship and meeting them. The guy that translated for us is another cool story. He's been through the preacher training school. He was a refugee from Sudan, and now he's living in Addis, Ethiopia, preaching the gospel, and he's actually going to school to become a doctor as well. So a lot of cool stories here, but that's what this picture is. So the bottom left corner is that little building that we met, and you can tell it's not a very big room. And those are the Sudanese brothers and sisters, and that's Dean and I preaching. So that was our experience with the student, and this is just the first day, so there's many other days and many other stories that I'll be telling. So after that, the next day we went to Nekemp, and immediately when we arrived to Nekemp, we were greeted by a bunch of children who were really quiet, and I was trying to talk to them, and I was like, obviously they can't understand my language, but actually they were deaf. They literally couldn't hear me, and we figured out they were deaf. Catie and I figured out they were deaf, and so we started kind of exchanging what little sign language we knew. And this was actually that first day. We just got greeted by all these kids there, and got to kind of hug on them and talk to them what little we could. And actually, there's people there right there. That kid standing next to Catie on her right. He was a deaf child once in that school, and he came back, and now he's a teacher at that school. So just another example of how these people, the Ethiopians, they buy into to this work that we're doing so much that they're willing to come back and do this service for others. So he's just one story of a child that went through that deaf school. So he's deaf, and he's now a teacher for the deaf school there. So that was our greeting. And then actually the next morning, Catie got locked in the bathroom. So since we're running short on time, I won't really get too much into that, but we had to break the door to get her out of that bathroom. She was in there for a while. And we were actually late to chapel, so it's pretty funny. And that's Al Mayhew and John Ed trying to rig the lock, but she was stuck in there for a long time. It was funny. Good times. So then after Catie got out of the bathroom finally, we went to the morning chapel with the children in the camp, and we got to hear them worship. And I thought that the adults really were loud when they were, man, the kids, it actually hurt your ears when you're in that room with how loud those kids sing and how they're just worshiping God with everything they have. So that's really neat, getting to hear them worship God. And then afterwards, they do like a little question and answering session where they get asked questions about the Bible, and they answer the questions and they give them a round of applause or whatever. And so then after that, they go to school, and actually that in the right corner, that's them praying during chapel. So they actually like kind of all either put their hands over the face, or some of them will just like lean like all the way forward while they're praying. It's really cute. Just the way that they behave and they act towards God and when they're in prayer to Him. And then that's actually the bottom right corner is just one of the classrooms there that we took. So those are both in the camp. So they have like little light blue uniforms in the camp. And in Jima, it's actually purple uniforms. And so then we got to give them lunch and candy. They had like little bread and tea, and then we gave them a little piece of candy. And it was just a really cool experience getting to see the work that's going on with the children there, and like seeing how we're blessing them. And I guess not Westside directly, but just the Church of Christ missionaries there, just blessing these children. And I would love to talk to you guys about that forever, but we can't do that. So after that, we got to go actually visit with the preacher training school. And this was kind of one place where my heart was really touched. And it's because of these two guys up here. So Dean and I got to deliver a message to them. But then afterwards, there was like a question and answer session. And so John Ed's going around. I think there's 10 guys, right, in the preacher training school. And so John Ed's going around and asking them questions. And John Ed's personality is kind of funny because he's just being really direct, asking them really direct questions about their life and what's going on. So this guy on the bottom right, his name is Laute. And you can't tell, but he's Sudanese by the way he looks. If you can't tell, that's how Sudanese people look. So he was from the border of Sudan and Ethiopia. And over there is a lot of turmoil, a lot of hard things going on. And he was reached by a brother over there. And he was actually, when he first started believing in God, walking 4 hours a day to go to church. So pretty amazing story of faith that guy has. And then the guy on the top left corner is a guy named Arab. And Arab is from Jima. And he grew up Muslim. And he was sent by Daegu to the preacher training school. And I wrote about him in the newsletter, so you can read all about him in the newsletter. But just an amazing story of faith with this guy. He can't go home now because his parents would kill him if he goes home. But he's there learning about God and getting ready to preach the gospel to others where he doesn't know where he's going next, but he's focused on God. And so time and time again, these people taught these lessons, or not taught these lessons, but answered these questions that just really cut your heart and kind of made you look inside and think, where am I putting my faith and how am I putting it into action? So those guys really stuck out. So Laote there on the bottom and then Arab there on the top. Very different stories, but just both such faithful believers, and they felt called, and so they're answering the call. Arab is from Jima, which is about a 7.5, 9 hour car ride, between 7.5 and 9 hour car ride. And he's just coming. He didn't know anything about the camp. He didn't know, what it would be like when he got there. He's a brand new believer. He's 18 years old. He didn't even tell his parents where he was going. He just left and went to this preacher training school to learn about God so that he could evangelize others. So, and he was sent there by Daegu is there because there's a kindergarten there. So even though we're not paying for the preacher training school, we are affecting the preachers there because they're getting sent there because of that kindergarten in Jima. So that was like one of the most encouraging things, that just because of a kindergarten that we have in Jima, there is a man there, and actually there was 3 gentlemen in the preacher training school that were sent from Daegu that lived around Jima. And so that was just amazing. The work that God's doing, not just for the children there, but not just for the parents of the children, but for the people in Jima because of the little kindergarten that's there. So that was kind of one validator of how great that work is that we're doing. One of many validators. So that's Arab and Laute. And if you guys could pray for all those guys, they need our prayers. So after the camp, we went to Jima. And Jima is the town where our kindergarten is that we support. It's not a huge kindergarten, about 50 kids, I think. But it's blessing all of these people. So we got to actually watch the children play games, watch them learn, and we gave them candy. And it was the cutest thing. They, when we gave them the candy, they didn't know to take the candy out of the wrapper, so they just start sticking it in their mouth. And I'm kind of like, this isn't too good, but we got to take the wrapper off. And so we start showing them how to eat the candy, and then the kids are, they're kind of going ballistic. This is like the best thing ever. And so they're running around, they're spitting it out and showing their friends. They're spitting it out, showing us, like, hey, look at this, I got a green one. So it's really funny. And then afterwards, they want to hold your hand, so you get these sticky candy hands holding your hands. And so it was awesome, but just a really funny experience, and kind of getting to laugh and see the lightheartedness after kind of having some more intense days was really refreshing. So, they have a very similar model as in the camp. So they met in the morning, and there was a chapel where they had like a question and answer. And Daegu, the preacher there, did the question and answer, and he did the chapel, and he led the study. And then afterwards, he gave them candy, or we gave them candy, and they had their little lesson, and then we played with them for a long time. So you can see that top left corner, that's a picture of Catie with some of the kids there, and that's them lined up getting ready to eat, and then that's them actually singing a song. They're singing a song about how they couldn't give God a hug because he was too big, too tall and too wide. So that's what's going on with their hands up in the air in that picture. So I figured since we support the kindergarten team, I just had some cute pictures of kids playing and learning. So I don't have much to talk about with this slide. It just that you can just look at those kids, and those kids are in Ethiopia right now, and they're being blessed by our work. So pretty awesome. Down there, the bottom left corner is just the entire group of little kids. And taking that picture was one of the more difficult things I've ever done in my life. Trying to round up kids in a different language. The logistics just weren't there. But after a while, they finally got the idea to gather around, the adults. And so they took this picture. And it's great. Look at that picture. So there's all the kids and everything going on. And there's some of them playing on a teeter-totter. This is actually welded by the welding school that is supported there. So pretty awesome. So we got to talk to Daegu. And Daegu is this guy on the bottom right corner. And he's the guy that sent Arab to preacher training school. So he was an awesome guy, really faithful servant. He was much more quiet than the other Ethiopians that we met, very reserved. But he kind of opened up towards the end. Had a couple little chuckles with me, and I was trying to speak Amharic to him. So I learned a couple of words, and so I would say "Ten Esteli" to him. And that means hi, how are you? But Of course, it probably doesn't sound like that to him. It probably sounds like something that's really ridiculous. So I got him to kind of chuckle at me a little bit by trying to speak Amharic to him. And he's a cool guy, really focused on reaching the people there, really focused on doing God's work and like doing it unapologetically. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. But he just has a heart for God. He wants to do what's right, and he is working tirelessly on our behalf in Ethiopia. So I couldn't put a better guy in that situation. He is called. He's put there by God to reach the people there, and he's doing an awesome job. So, and then there's the staff of the school, and the staff of the school is excellent too. And we'll talk about that as well in the next slide. But the staff are working hard. They're trained teachers just like at any other kindergarten or any other school in Ethiopia. They're trained and they can speak fairly good English, and they teach them English and they teach them about Jesus, and they do a really great job there. So that's the staff there on the top, and I don't remember all of their names. Dadidu is like the principal of the school. She runs it. So that's the gal's name, Dadidu, and then Degu is the preacher there. But the other staff members' names I can't remember. Then after all of that, actually there was a session where the parents of the children came to Jima, and we talked to the parents of those children in Ethiopia. And something I haven't mentioned about Jima, well, I kind of did, I talked about Arab, but actually more than 50 or 60% of the population in Jima is Muslim. And so most of the children that go to that kindergarten are Muslim. They aren't raised in a Christian household. And so when those parents came, most of the parents that came and that we got to talk to were Muslim. And so I wasn't quite sure how to do that, if I was supposed to talk about Jesus or not supposed to. But the Amharic word for Jesus is Jesus, and I heard Degu say it like 100 times, and so I was like, well, I guess we're just preaching or teaching them whatever we can about Jesus and using this time to tell them about Jesus and our beliefs. And so it was awesome. We got to talk to these parents of these children, and I got to stand up there and tell them how much I love them and how much this church cares about them, and how God loves them, and how Jesus died for our sins, and we got to pray for them, and we got to talk with these people, and then afterwards there was like a little, we said Q&A, but it ended up just being a session where they explained how much this kindergarten has blessed them. And there's a story of this gal who has 4 kids, and she and her husband are both disabled, and they have 4 kids. And 3 of them have already gone through our kindergarten in Jima, and 1 of them is currently in the kindergarten. And the 3 that they've all 3 gone on to the government schools and have been able to excel and be at the top of their class in the government schools because of the education that is provided for them by that church. So it's not just like we're doing some sort of charity work and giving them a place to be for a couple of days. We're teaching these kids, and they're going on to become better contributors to their society, and they can provide for themselves better because of that education that they get. So it's not just really nice, but it actually they do a really great job. Those teachers are excellent, and they can't speak enough about how great those teachers were. Time and time again, we were told how excellent the teaching was there, and just how blessed they were by our church so far away, and they just couldn't say thank you enough, it seemed like. But really it was just such a mutual feeling, because being able to do that for them and being able to meet with them was just equally amazing. So we got to do that, and that was an awesome experience again. And so just really blessed there. And so there's a picture of us in Degu. I didn't take any pictures, or Catie didn't take any pictures of the parents there. I know John and I took a bunch, but we didn't have any for the slideshow, unfortunately. So there's just another picture of us in Degu, and then some of the kids in Ethiopia. That little girl eating bread with her tea. That's their dinner, or I'm sorry, their lunch. So we got to return to Addis after that. So our 6th and 7th day there, we're returning to Addis, and we saw Baboon and just amazing African countryside there. I wanted to include that picture
canyon was, or that little valley. It was amazing. And then obviously there's like 30 baboons on that stretch of road right there, and so I took a picture of baboon and we put it in the show because I thought it was really cool. I've never seen a baboon before, but we got to have like a really cool experience on our drive back and see some wildlife and to see God's awesome creation in Ethiopia and how green and beautiful it was. We came right after the rainy season, so everything was just really green and pretty, and all the flowers were blooming. And it was just great for my allergies because I was just in a constant state of sneezing and being amazed at how beautiful everything was. So that the night we returned to Addis, Alamehu's wife kind of had us over and they had a feast for us, and so I wanted to show you some pictures of that. But it's just really cool getting blessed by these people. They're so grateful of all the help that we offer them, and they're working so hard that their hard work is enough, but they wanted to give us a feast and have us eat some traditional Ethiopian food. So that's anjira, is that like little rolled up bread looking thing. It's like this kind of spongy tortilla thing almost. And they eat their soup out of it. They eat everything with it. They just like wad it up kind of like that and grab it. And so that's how they eat. They don't really use spoons or forks. They eat everything with that anjira. And so we had anjira with spicy soup and less spicy soup, but they were both pretty spicy. And we had, some different like chicken, like grilled chicken, and all sorts of really great food. It's cool, very different than the food we eat here. And so it's kind of cool sharing that culture, them sharing their culture with us and getting to kind of enjoy a traditional Ethiopian meal there. So that was awesome. So I just took, there's some pictures there of that. And this is all in Alamehu's house. And got to kind of visit with them and talk with them afterwards, and that was really nice. So the last day we spent there, it was on Saturday. And so like a week from this last Saturday, we were there. And it was kind of just a quiet day waiting for the plane to come. And so I had an opportunity to talk to John Ed a lot. And he just told me so much. And I look back at my time spent with Garth, actually, when I would go learn from Garth quite a bit and how much of a blessing that was. And this was kind of a similar thing where I had someone just with wisdom that was willing to impart that, and as long as I was willing to listen, they were going to talk. So it was really neat getting to talk to John Ed, and Catie was there for that too. Just getting blessed by his wisdom and the knowledge that he has, and sharing that with us. And he told us stories about his family, stories about Ethiopia, different trouble that they've had, different hardships that they've faced, but they've just seemed to always overcome. So I got to hear, man, I know so much about Ethiopia now, and the civil unrest that's going on there, and the problems with the government that they have, and but just the way that God's been able to develop them. I mean, time and time again, He delivers them through all these troubles and hardships that are had in Ethiopia. And so it was amazing. Getting to talk to him was really fun. And obviously, we were there. It was me, Catie, Dean, and John Ed, and so we just talked and chatted and told stories for hours until it was time to go. So that was really neat. It was a great day. It was very different than all the other days, but it was just still a great day. So what I wanted to share with you guys is just how big God's kingdom is. So there's the Sudanese in Addis. There's the deaf children in Kemp. There's the preacher training school of men all over Ethiopia. It's just a huge kingdom there. And, we look at it here, and, there's a few churches here or whatever, but we're all kind of separate. But we're all really intertwined. We all follow the same God. We're all, all of us that follow Jesus, all of us that follow the Bible, we're seeking to know God better, and they really get that in Ethiopia. They really just have this interconnectedness that's just really refreshing and awesome to kind of see how hard they're working for one another, even if that person is hours away and they'll probably never meet them. They're just working hard and tirelessly for one another. So I wanted to bring that back to Westside and encourage us to work hard for one another, encourage us to work hard for Ethiopia, and just never forget how big this kingdom is. It's so much bigger than one church body here. It's so much bigger than Bakersfield or the United States, or even bigger than Ethiopia. It's the entire world. And so it was just kind of amazing getting to see like-minded people that otherwise are completely different than me in Ethiopia. I got to see God's work firsthand. I've seen it time and time again here in the United States, but I got to see it again in Ethiopia with the preacher's training school, with the children at the kindergarten, with the Sudanese folks that literally had nothing. I got to see it time and time again, and so I wanted to share that with you too. And just know that God is working in the lives of many people, doing amazing things that you couldn't even imagine. So our goal, so this is actually the Church of Christ and the kindergarten that we support. That's the sign. And so our goal, Catie and me, and probably, hopefully, all of you guys are going to team up with us, but our goal is to make sure that that sign is always there. That Ethiopia has a kindergarten in Jima where people are getting taught, about Jesus, where there's a preacher there that can tell them about the good word, where he can share it with people of whatever faith they may have. But that's our goal. So we want to encourage future contributions and continue partnership with the missionary efforts in Ethiopia. I'm not sure how it's going to look 10 years from now. The political and climate in Ethiopia is ever changing. It's run by tribes. So currently one tribe is leading the politics in Ethiopia, and it's being controlled by whatever tribe that is. But our goal is to, no matter what happens, in 10 years, that sign's still up because of the work that we're doing here for those children. So I'm not sure how that's going to look. I'm not sure if that's going to be, something secret where we have to still, go behind and do. I mean, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that Ethiopia is being taught about God and we're evangelizing the whole country. So I just want to thank everyone. Thank you for listening to me today. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for giving us money to go. Whatever you've done to help support Ethiopia, thank you so much. There's great, wonderful things going on in Ethiopia, and let's just continue to, we're without us, God will still work there. But I think that it's something that we can do that's so cool that we can really bless them. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm taking over the Change for Children cans, and so part of giving to that cause is those Change for Children. So if you want to pick up a can, take it home, put your change in it. Maybe if you just want to slide some money in there and give it back, however you want to give. I would encourage you to give. Yeah, take one of those cans home. Thanks, Garth. Take one of those cans home. Catie and I will grab them and make sure that they get into the right hands. And all that money will go to the kindergarten in Jima. If there's some sort of money that you want to allocate elsewhere, I'll have to talk to the elders on how I need to make sure that's happening. But if you're really interested in contributing to the preacher training school or something like that, I want to be able to facilitate that if I can. So I'll have to talk to the elders and figure out how we do that here at Westside. But I just want to continue that partnership and continue the Change for Children missionary efforts in Ethiopia. So thank you all so much. I know I went over time, but thank you guys for listening. And God bless all of you. And that's it. That's all I have.